Thank you so much for sticking with Citizen TV. This is Daybreak, and as I promised you, we're going to get into the main conversation, which is the impact of social media, in just a few minutes. But as always, we want to take a look at some of the stories making headlines in the local dailies, and as you've guessed it, yes, it is matters budget, like the Standard newspaper, the real hustlers hit. Page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to page 12. It's just matters budget. And today we want to specifically look at one sector when it comes to matters budget: online. Because the people I have here with me are experts in their own way, but online. So with me I have Nelly Ndonye. She is the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions Rep here in Africa. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Nelly.
Thank you.
And sitting next to Nelly on this other side, we have Alfred Ongere, the founder of Artificial Intelligence AI Kenya.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So, you know, yesterday Rotich read the budget, and so much was read, so many losers and gainers. I think one of the losers is if you have an online business, because now tax bracket will be bringing in taxation to those in online business. Rotich says this will harness the growth of digital economy currently spurred by the increase of internet penetration. When you hear this, what does it mean for anyone, for any young person who makes money out of their YouTube channel, out of their blog, and so forth?
Well, I think to a certain extent, we have been paying taxes, because when you're running a blog or a YouTube video channel,
right,
you're being paid by a brand, which means that when the brand is paying you, they will definitely withhold the 5%. So you are hired as a consultant, so the 5% is withheld. If you are selling your service and charging and registered for tax, you're still paying the 16%. But yes, there is a big chunk that has not been paying those taxes, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, because we all have to contribute to the economy. But I think it'll complicate how we run the businesses online.
All right, but Alfred, if you look at the people who are online, the people who are doing these YouTube videos, and the people who are doing these blogs, and the people who are, you know, making videos for Facebook and so forth, they're young people, people in university, people who have just started their careers. It's not someone who runs an entire media, you know, conglomerate. These are young people.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on that?
I think, irrespective of age, the industry is still the same. So we need to shift and play with what's happening with the regulators, because we can't escape it. It was going to happen sooner or later. So I think it's just up to the young people to adjust and realize this is business as any other. And another thing I would also say is it will be interesting to look at how they'll change it for the different aspects of online business, whether it's YouTube, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's any other marketing that they're doing online. So will they be taxing them differently, or they'll just use one standard for everything? That's what I'm looking up to.
That's what you're looking at. Yeah. You are a very, even more diverse sector, artificial intelligence, here in Kenya. Yeah. Is it fair that such a industry that is more of a baby, not only in Kenya but on the African continent, should be taxed without having seen what it potentially can be?
I would say it will eventually be taxed, because it relies on the sort of, I'd say, traditional industry that we've already had, which is the data industry, the data that we always produce every day. So the regulations that are affecting this, the data we interact with, they will eventually trickle down to the artificial intelligence systems. Right. So it was going to happen sooner or later, I'd say. At some point. Yes.
All right. Of course, also joining us here is a digital entrepreneur and founder of Nendo, Mark Kaigo. It's good to have you with us here,
Happy
Mark.
to be here.
So you've just found us discussing the budget, but more specifically online businesses and how they will be taxed. Where do you stand on this? What are your thoughts? Because as you were just walking in, we were just sharing how you look at the people who do online businesses, and it's not necessarily a full-fledged business, but YouTube channels, bloggers, etc. These are young people. Some of them still in university, and here we are now taxing online business. Where do you stand on this as a digital entrepreneur?
Sure, I think there's two ways to look at it. There's the institutions and the individuals. So if you look at Amazon, Apple, Google, Facebook, and many of the platforms, there's a way to encourage knowledge-based businesses like that to thrive. That can be through initiatives like Konza, for example, or through tax subsidies for startups, or through kind of preferential arrangements that allow people to have a Pan-African base being based here. So I think while taxes in and of themselves are never a bad thing, I think it's what we debate now is how they're levied and who they're levied on. At the individual level now, what we're saying is that the people who build on these platforms and create value and find other people who are ready to pay for that value, either in their time and attention, which is actually the most important currency of all. And then with the brands and people that would support that, I think that's now where obviously we're having this idea of how do you encourage people to start? How do you encourage people to become successful? But once they do become successful, how do they become contributors to what I'm sure KRA's mandate is, which is expanding the tax base? So I think that's now where we could have creative discussions about how to encourage people. So obviously you've had this idea of, you don't pay value-added tax until you make a certain amount in annual turnover. But now the question is, well, what's the incentive? And how do we allow some of these expenses that online people will accrue, where they're paying global companies who don't even have a tax base in Dublin, elsewhere, and allow them basically to thrive? So while we're getting them into the tax base, we're also encouraging more of them to join in.
And Mark, that's the thing. That's what I was literally coming to next. Remember last year when Uganda also read their budget, they decided to tax social media. And here in Kenya, we were like, oh, God forbid they ever do that. And in this year's budget, which they also read yesterday, the social media tax has decreased. Nevertheless, if we were to tax the internet, or should I say internet-based companies like Uganda did, how do you even begin to tax Facebook, whose headquarters are not even in Kenya, Amazon, etc.? I
don't think they actually taxed Facebook. I think they actually taxed Ugandans.
The individuals.
And I think that seemed, in my opinion, was a little... I may have my disagreements with how it was done. It has generated revenue for them, so let's start there, which was of course their objective. So if it was about setting about an objective, they accomplished it. What that came at the expense of is freedom of information, freedom of kind of access to the internet. The question of affordability is going to linger with us the longer our economy stays where it's at. And so we have more reason to try to remove the barriers than set them up. And here in this case, it was because there was a position around what Ugandans were doing with this social media that wasn't agreed upon. And so they said, instead of taxing Facebook and Google and those companies, which it's notoriously difficult to do so, they would actually tax what are called over-the-top services, or OTT services. And if you want to access your WhatsApp, so many viewers right now will have woken up, when they're switching off the alarm clock, they can look at their notifications. Imagine not getting those notifications until you pay the tax for the day, and you paid from the airtime. That's the reality there. And if you don't have a VPN, what's called a virtual private network, even then, by they're trying to block those, which are a way of basically circumventing. So point is, we're not there, and I think we should, we should just consider ourselves for where we are.
Right.
Let me put it that way.
Nelly, what does that do to Biashara on a large scale? Because you are the marketing rep for LinkedIn here in Africa. What does that do to the likes of LinkedIn, Facebook, WhatsApp?
Well, I think there's still the benefit and value that people are getting out of it. So you'll still have people adapting to the platforms and probably making the necessary adjustments to access the content. What it will do is that it will limit the number of people who can access it, because with that fee, then someone has to look at what are my priorities. So based on that, there will be less people taking advantage of those platforms. But you see, the result of that is that the benefit that we're getting, less people will have access to it. So it's like limiting education.
Right. It's
like limiting access to free data. So I think that would not necessarily be the best way to go about it. But I think from a taxation perspective, it's just the way it's structured that will make all the difference. It's just the way they need to structure it. But I believe that to a certain extent, we are already being taxed because businesses don't buy and pay cash to influencers or to video content developers. They actually want to work with businesses. So you have to be registered. So one way or the other, you're still being taxed. Yeah.
Well, that limit, Alfred, that Nelly has spelled out very well for us, does that limit equal to infringement, or also, again, limit of freedom of expression? At the end of the day, if you're not able to then, like Mark has said, access your WhatsApp, your LinkedIn, that means you can only do just as much.
No, but thankfully, I'll say that's not what's been levied on us.
Yes, luckily for us.
But what has
generally,
been is I think something, and I'd love to get your take, Alfred, on at least that as we said, tries to expand the base. So we were not even negotiating about expanding the base. It's actually the mandate of the Revenue Authority. What we're saying here is what incentives, how can we incentivize the right behavior? Okay. Like we want to collect taxes, we want to levy penalties if those taxes aren't remitted, or what's the incentive? And I think that's maybe the more creative aspect of this budgeting process, where you encourage content creators who don't really seek permission. I mean, they only so many people can occupy this seat with this infrastructure to broadcast across the country. And yet there's people with reach that is 10% or 5% or 1% of this media station that's been around for decades. So that's something, and that's credit to them. Question is, what else can we incentivize them to do for them to then become, I guess, bigger contributors, okay, which is the idea.
Alfred?
Yeah, what I'll be interested in is seeing how, after the taxation happens, how the revenue sort of comes down and the people being taxed realize an impact from that taxation. So how is the government protecting these content creators in terms of watching out for them as online businesses? I'd say that would be the key thing. All right. Yeah.
So we need to close up this conversation, but I just generally need your advice as Kenyans, as young Kenyans seated here on this table, where you stand when it comes to our economy. You know, one of the most interesting articles that probably you'll find in one of your local dailies today is, will 1,000 Kenyan shillings buy you more or less on your budget? So, but Mark, you're giggling. Let me start with you then. As a young Kenyan, where do you stand in terms of are Kenyans, and more specifically young Kenyans, frustrated with the economy, the living standards here in Kenya? Is it more tough to live in Kenya? Is it more difficult to start a business?
I mean, I can speak as me, or I can speak from the data that we have access to. I mean, as far as we can tell, there is somewhat of a discontentment, I think, with life. Some people, if they wanted to be critical, could say, oh, you know what, that's just the millennial generation facing up to these structural challenges of their expectations and the reality that they're in. But there is, I think, at the heart of that discontentment is a reality that's not been manifested, let me say, for them in terms of opportunities, in terms of, sometimes it's on their side in terms of employability, and us and the system seeing what it can do to help support them to be more employable or marketable, if you like. But that there's some structural things that I think have led here. We're a young country, I think, with the desire for incentives and opportunities, and whether it's, you know, AGPO, for example, or the digital and program, there's avenues. Question is, how quickly can those be scaled commensurate to some of these more top-down solutions? So I think it's a delicate balance, but I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I've seen, just from looking at cyberspace and the content that people create online, that there will be very tough questions, I think, asked of the public sector, especially in the service delivery, or rolling this out, or some of the other agenda items that are top of young people's minds today.
Right. Nelly, Mark really brings in the aspect of creating opportunities. So from where you also stand, LinkedIn is one of the biggest and most popular sites where young people sort of put their CVs on and sort of show off their muscles to get employment. That's where the employer-employee in this digital age sort of meet. From where you stand, should the government be creating more investment opportunities for young people or create jobs?
I think it's actually creating an ecosystem that enables job creation. Right. Because if look at LinkedIn, for example, if you start taxing them, then it's going to be harder for them to do business here. But if you make it such that you're actually bringing in new technology and new infrastructure and welcoming such investors into Africa and into Kenya, then that way you're creating more jobs. So it's a little bit of a balance in terms of what opportunities are we creating for the investors and the businesses who are willing to come into the market, because our market is hungry. We have smart people who are constantly inventing and coming up with new executions, new ideas, overlaying what's already been created in Europe and the US. But if we create a frustrating environment for them to come in and empower the locals with information, education, platforms, then it's going to be a bit tricky. So I think I wouldn't say incentives are great, but we all understand the structural challenges around that, or high investments. But how about creating opportunity? Let's not frustrate the investors. Let's welcome them. Let's make it easier for them to do business. That way, the Kenyan people will feed out of that opportunity, and they'll create jobs. They'll create opportunities.
Well, Alfred, you are the founder of Artificial Kenya. artificial intelligence Kenya.
Yes.
Do you also agree with that, that perhaps the government needs to create more incentives for them business to organically grow itself?
Yes, yes. I totally agree with that.
All right. So we need to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll dive into the biggest conversation today on social scale, which is the impact of social media. It has both its negative as well as its positive. According to the Communication Authority of Kenya, we have about 51 million Kenyans online, and the Bloggers Association of Kenya, which is big, puts it with Facebook. 7.1 million Kenyans are active on Facebook, 7.1. On YouTube, 8 million Kenyans. Instagram, 4 million Kenyans. On Twitter and LinkedIn, collectively, 1 million Kenyan shillings. Of course, we've seen both the positive and impact of social media growth. On one side of the negative, depression and anxiety, cyberbullying, the fear of missing out, which is the former. General addiction has also come with these gadgets that we have. But on the positive side, we've seen teachers and students be more integrated. In this day and age, you can learn and sort of figure out anything with where you are across the world. Social media has also strengthened relationships between people and the ability to build communities. So we'll take a look at this, the impact of it, both from a societal point of view as well as biashara. Would love to hear from you. So tweet us at Citizen TV Kenya @Zinzi_K, or you can simply call in on 0719 777 777 or text on 22422. You're spoiled for choices. We'll be right back.